Hello, I'm Annabel Brodie-Smith, Communications Director of the Association of Investment Companies. And earlier today, I was talking to Simon Gergel, Fund Manager of the Merchants Trust, about the opportunities that he was finding in the UK.
Well, we put a lot of focus on value in our investment approach. Firstly, we buy companies with high or above average dividend yields, which is a form of value investing. And secondly, when we buy companies, we look at the fundamentals of the business, the valuation of the company and what's going to change. And so valuation is a core part of our investment approach. And we will sell shares if they become too expensive. And we're always looking to buy companies when they're below average valuation. In terms of whether value investing is due to recovery, value investing has been very difficult in the period since the financial crisis when interest rates came down to very low levels, as the future value of growth became more valuable today with the lower interest rates. As interest rates have started to go up, particularly in America, we think it's a tougher environment for growth investing, and therefore it should favour value investing to some extent. So I think value investing is due a bit of a catch up, yeah. It's a really exciting time to be an investor in the UK market because there's such polarisation of valuations and themes. We particularly like a number of sectors. We've been putting money into the aerospace and defence sector, where you have a recovering defence expenditure after a long period of cutbacks. You've got a strong civil aerospace market, and you've got good companies, sound companies on sensible valuations. We've been putting money into domestic real estate because many of those companies are trading at exceptionally low valuations. Many financial companies, and also recently the tobacco companies, which we didn't own for a while, but the valuations have come back so far, they're now actually very cheap again. I'm very proud to be the manager of the Merchants Trust as we reach, now we've reached the 130th anniversary. It's a great achievement for the Trust. And I think it does put Brexit uncertainties into context, that there have been some really very significant events in that 130 years, such as world wars, such as financial crisis. And therefore, I think the Brexit difficulties, challenges need to be borne in that perspective. I think there are great opportunities in the UK stock market. Most British companies earn the majority of sales and profits from abroad, and therefore they're not as directly involved or exposed to Brexit as you might imagine. Therefore, I think it's a great time to be investing in the UK. And I think once Brexit is out of the way, once we know where we are, we will have an element of uncertainty which is released, an element of pent-up demand which can come back, if you like. And therefore, I'm pretty optimistic about the outlook for British companies from where we stand today. At the Merchants Trust, we do two things to keep the yield high. Firstly, we buy companies with high dividend yields. It may sound obvious, but we like buying high yield companies. We think historically, high yield companies have tended to outperform the market more broadly. So we fish in that pond. We try and buy companies which have a good yield, which obviously helps the income. And in terms of continuing to grow the dividend every year, we are very careful and make sure we understand the outlook for dividends across the portfolio. But being an investment trust, we have the ability to tuck away money in reserves in the good years to make up for the shortfall in the bad years. So if you went through the financial crisis, we put a lot of money into reserves in 2008, 2009 to pay rising dividends through the most difficult time when dividends were being cut in the subsequent year or two. And then we've come through that still with strong reserves in place. And we're now putting money back into reserves again to build up those reserves for potentially another downturn along the way. So the investment trust structure lends itself to paying a consistently growing dividend, and the high yield nature of the portfolio helps us to deliver that high yield for investors.
So that was Simon Gergel, Fund Manager of the Merchants Trust. Now, Merchants Trust is this year celebrating its 130th anniversary. And Simon thinks that we have to view Brexit in this context. It is creating opportunities. It's a time of uncertainty, but looking forward, Simon remains pretty optimistic about prospects for the UK.